Hello everyone and welcome to the Proudfoot podcast. Today on our 19th episode, we are going to talk about cantrips in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. So let's get started. First off, there are 27 cantrips in the player's handbook, and every class has a subset of these that they can learn. The largest cantrip lists are the Sorcerer and the Wizard. It's the same list, in fact, and every class, other than these two, has unique cantrips that only that class gets to learn. Now, there are lots of utility cantrips which are great to have because you can use them to solve problems and be really savvy about different encounters that you come across in D&D. So don't count out your utility cantrips. Read them, see which ones you want to use. For example, Minor Illusion, Message, Mage Hand, these are all really good cantrips that can be used in a variety of ways. Other fan favorites are Prestidigitation, Spare the Dying for clerics, Druidcraft for druids, and many more that are always going to be some kind of useful in many different situations that you're going to find yourselves in. So don't count out the utility cantrips. The other thing that I want to mention is cantrips are permanent. You do not get to prepare cantrips like you get to prepare spells, or know cantrips like you get to know spells. Cantrips are said to be ingrained in your memory. You've practiced them so much that you just can't forget them. So because of that narrative, you don't get to change them out. When you pick them, those are the ones you have. So keep that in mind. Cantrips are here to stay. They don't go away. Okay, so now with that out of the way, I want to talk about the damage cantrips. So damage cantrips have a lot of similarities. The first similarity is that if you have a damage cantrip, they all scale the same way. So what do I mean by scaling? Well, when you increase your character level to level 5, the damage die goes from 1 to 2. When you get to level 11, it goes to 3, and when you get to level 17, it goes to 4. Again, cantrips are 0th level spells. They do not cost spell slots to consume, so you can cast them at will as many times as you want in a day. Now, this is great because when we run low on spell slots, we want something to fall back on, so cantrips are here to save us. And they scale up with us so that even when we're at levels 19 and 20, cantrips are still relevant and still okay to use when we're out of spell slots or low on spell slots. So that's what scaling is. Now, the next thing I want to talk about for cantrips is the extra stuff, the bonus stuff. So generally speaking, if your cantrip is making you roll a ranged spell attack or a melee spell attack, the extra stuff is going to be something that maybe the cantrip can be used in a utility way, or maybe when you hit the target with the cantrip, some effect happens to them outside of damage, like their speed is slowed, or maybe they lose the reaction for a turn, or they can't regain hit points. These are examples of some things that some of the cantrips do, in fact, affect creatures with. And if you have a cantrip that makes your opponent roll a save, then this typically doesn't do anything extra. There are two exceptions to this, one being Sacred Flame, which is the only cleric cantrip that does damage. It makes the opponent roll a dex save and they don't benefit from cover. That's the extra stuff. And then there is Vicious Mockery for bards. Again, the only damage cantrip that bards have. This is the worst damage cantrip in the game because it only does a d4 damage, but it's the most hilarious damage cantrip in the game because the description says you hurl insults at your opponent, and if they fail a wisdom save, these insults hurt them so much that they take 1d4 psych damage, which I find just hilarious. But aside the point, they also, as a special thing, the target is disadvantaged on the next attack roll it makes before the end of your next turn. Now, just as an aside, since Vicious Mockery is the lowest damage output cantrip, it's worth mentioning the highest damage output cantrip, which is Poison Spray. It is a Constitution-based saving throw. It makes the target, if they fail this save, take 1d12 poison damage, and this cantrip can be learned by every single full caster except for bards and clerics. So it's worth checking out if you're interested in a high output damage cantrip. There's one other cantrip that's worth mentioning, and it's for warlocks. Warlocks have a cantrip called Eldritch Blast, and Eldritch Blast is interesting. It's a ranged spell attack cantrip that does 1d10 force damage, and if you increase your level as a character, so you get up to level 5, rather than it doing 2d10 force damage, it, as its extra stuff, lets you do another attack against the same creature or a different creature for, again, 1d10 damage. Fun fact about warlocks is they have things in their class that can buff this specific cantrip, so often warlocks will take it, and then this cantrip will get a lot better than it reads on paper. So if you're interested in how that works, go check out the warlock class and these things called evocations in there. But I'm getting off topic now. This is all I wanted to say on cantrips today. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the 80 Proudfoot podcast. If you enjoyed it, please follow us on Instagram, Spotify, or Twitter. And as always, may the gods have mercy on your soul.